I'm going to make a new scene. Save scene as collider detector collision. Tutorial. Say okay. So normally, if you use URP template, there is this very simple camera controller. You don't need this script, but I'm going to share the script. The reason is to see how you can control this. This is called Simple Camera Controller. I'm going to save this here. Simple camera. This is really simple. This I didn't write this. If you import, if you open your scene from URP template, for example, if you make a URP, this universal random pipeline, you have it in there in the template already. So you can bring the script here. Simple camera controller, and put that camera controller inside this camera. This allows you to navigate during the game runtime. So for example, you can make a cube. Okay. Now, if you don't have that script, you cannot move while you're playing as a gamer. Now, if you play it, you can rotate, use your camera, mouse, and ASDW to just move around. So using the camera controller. Okay. So what does that detector thing do? For example, if you have, for example, if you let's make some cylinder. Let's make something like this. Let's think about this as like coins that you can collect, for example. So I'm going to make one. All right. So what if these are coins that I want to delete it or do something when I meet it, for example. When I have this camera, I assume that I will be a person that is like around 2 meters tall. So I'm going to make a capsule that is around a person size. Say something like this. And I'm going to, so my camera is here. I'm going to say, I'm going to put a collider. So you see this naturally when you make some object, it has this collider coming together. So this is a physical collider. I'm going to hook this up, like make a child of camera of this collider. So the reason for this is whenever I move my camera, I have a collider with it. I can also just turn off the renderer, or in this case, it doesn't really affect my vision, so I will just have it on. Okay, so what this does is when I play, if now I navigate around, move, the collider moves together with my camera. So what happens is when I collide with this geometry, actually there is something happening and it returns the collision data. The principle is that this thing should also have a collider. If the geometry doesn't have a collider, it doesn't collide. Okay. So we can make a very simple script for this camera to detect the collider. So we're going to create, this is just an example exercise, okay? So this is, we're going to say collision detection example, okay? And then I'm going to connect this one here. Edit script. Okay. What this is doing is it detects things when you are colliding with something. So this is called void on collision. Enter. This is a default Unity provided thing. And then you can, oh, one more thing you need is you need to have a rigid body. I think. Yes, you need a rigid body. So in the capsule, this guy, we should add rigid body. Yes, so even if we have collider, if we don't have rigid body, it doesn't understand, doesn't give you the position, the collision information. But here, we have to make sure that we turn the constraint or the position and rotation, because otherwise they're gonna fly away. So we are going to do that for all of these. So we are going to add rigid body with all the rotation and position constraint. In the script we shared, it does things more slightly differently and makes all this manual work automatic. So you don't have to worry about this. But here it's just giving you a principle, what this is. Okay, so once you have the rigid body.
Hey, Somi.
Hi.
So can you explain a little bit, like, what exactly the constraints mean? Like when you say like freeze position, like is it for the rigid body, like what does that do?
Otherwise they will fly. I will show you later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they get collided, and because the physical simulation, they will like hit each other and fly. Like they'll fly away. Yeah, if you don't freeze it.
Oh, so it's like they already come kind of like with some sort of acceleration or something like that, and
they have like their physicality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I will show you. I will not constrain this one. Yeah. I'll show you what happens. Okay. So now if I play this, so this will fall. Okay, it's gonna fall.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
because you have gravity enabled.
Yeah, rigid body has this everything. Has all this physicality in it. So for example, even if I have it not falling, okay, now it's not falling, right?
Mhm.
But what if I, even if I, okay, if I go hit it, what I need is the hitting information, but what it does is it's gonna hit it, it's gonna fly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you don't have it, I'm going to hit these ones that are not that are constrained. Look, if I have it not constrained, it's going to just give me the information of hitting information. It's not going to hit it and fly it away. Okay, but this one is gonna hit.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that's why we need to freeze the rotation and position, because we only need the collision information. It's a very good question. Thank you. Okay, so in order to get that information and understand what this is, I'm going to name this, say, coin 1. And this one is coin 2. And this one is cube. And I'm going to make the light. Okay, and whenever I hit them, I'm going to let it print their name here. Okay. Okay, so the principle of that is game object, get component, rigid body. If the rigid body is not null, this is to prevent any error. What it's going to do is debug log just collided with something, and I'm going to return the name, the collision, collider, and name. So whatever it collided, it's going to return its name. That's it. Then now, if I go back, and whenever I hit something, it's going to give me the name here. So I'm going to, okay, I can also, oops, I shouldn't. Okay. Go hit this one. This one was coin 1. So it's not giving me the name. Oh, because this one, the rigid body is inside capsule instead of the main camera. So I should have added this script inside capsule. Sorry, so I should delete this one here. Sorry. I should delete this one from here, remove component. Instead of put it in the camera, I should have put it in the capsule. So collision detection example. Yes. Because the rigid body is inside the capsule. So now if I hit it, it gives me the name of coin. Okay, I'm also hitting with the plane, cube, coin 2. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So now in principle, what you can do is you can hook this kind of capsule, a capsule with human size under your camera and do this manually. Yeah, if anything that you want to do in Trigger more simply. And then you can do trigger something more like one by one. So for example, I want to, when I go to hit coin 1, I'm going to show a model. Sorry, I only have this house model. So let's say, okay, if I hit coin 1, I'm going to display enable this house. And if I, so this is too big. If I hit coin 2, I will display, okay, another house. Let's say I'm gonna display this house. Okay. So house number 1, house number 2. The name doesn't really matter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have that, so I don't need any start. I don't need any update. I can say I can bring these two game objects in public game object, object 1, public game object, object number 2, and here if the collision collider name, that's the name, contains, you can say equals to, but contains will make sure that it accommodates all the letters. Contains coin 1. I will trigger enable the object number 1 true, but I'm going to make sure that the number 2 is false. Coin number 1, so I need to make sure that this is exactly the same name. Here, Control C, Control V. Coin number 2. Set the second object active and the first object disactive. So now if I play, they're still all on, so I'm going to first turn them off. Then I'm going to go there. If I hit coin number 1, oops, I didn't add this object here. Number 1, it shows house number 1. Okay, so that's the principle. So in order to just make sure that all of them are turned off in the beginning, we just made another script or function called setup initial state. And make sure all of these objects are turned off in the setup, so in the start. So void start. When we start, we are going to call the initial state where everything is turned off. Also, when we come out from the detection, we also want to turn that off. So for that, we are going to say void on collision exit. When we exit the collision, if the name contains coin, we are going to set the initial states. So what happens is it only turns on when you are inside that coin. So play now. I go there. I show that. When you come out, it disappears. Okay. So that was the main principle, and you can do this manually now, just by maybe you animate the entire camera passes and you want to trigger some of the animation or some of the UIs to disappear and appear. You can use this simple collision detection method.
Hey, Somi. I just had a quick question. Can you explain like what's the difference between like where it says like private void on collision enter versus like when you have like void, just like a regular void?
Okay, so whatever is regular has nothing, it's private. Yeah, so they're all private. Yeah, because this one is a, so for example, this one is white color, right? So white color means it's a function that I wrote by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, for example, start on collision enter is provided by Unity package. That's why automatically gave me this private after I type it as auto type. But I can also delete it. Because if you don't say private, it's private. If you don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So private means it's a private function. This is called function, or you can call it method. So this function is accessible by other classes from outside. Meaning, for example, this is public, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you can actually see that from here. This is outside of the class. Yeah, but all of the other things you cannot see it. Also, another really interesting thing about, not interesting, like quick thing to test. So for example, if you have a button, right? If you made a button and you add this capsule here, then you can access this collision detection example, isn't it? There are some ready-made things, but don't worry. If I want to have this access by this button, you have to make it public. Does it make sense? So if I don't say public, so this is setup initial state, right? So if you see here collision detection example, I cannot see that here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Oh, I see what you're saying.
because this is private, right?
Yeah.
So setup initial state, that's what I just wrote, and I cannot find it here. But if I want to access from the button, I just make it public. So I make it public, then now you can see that. So setup initial state.
Oh, okay.
So that's the outside. So it became public variable that you can see from other classes, other outside anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Outside the script.
So for example, so you don't have to, so like the other ones above, you have like public game object. That's like just if you want to insert something, but you can also set the, I guess the class is public, and that would give you what, like a print, like a print of what it's doing or something, or.
Yeah, so these are variables. You can have private variables and public variables. Now these two is public. That's why you can add them from Unity inspector, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they become private, if you say private, you cannot see from here.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm saving it. Now it disappeared here.
Oh, yeah. And for the methods, like, do you get like a printout, or like how did you, for example, if you have like set active and false, do you get to see that from the inspector? Or like how does it work when you do
These
like
methods,
method? Yeah.
these are methods are not visible from inspector like this, but method can be seen from button. Like button triggers a activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these methods are considered as action.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this, you can do this action, that action, this action, right? For that, inspector doesn't show all the actions as an example, but it shows the variables.
Okay.
These are variables, values, but buttons are actually something to trigger one of these action methods. So that's why in the, so it says no function. Basically, method is equals to function. So actually, you will need a lot of public functions to be shown to the buttons, right? So if you want to trigger this from a button, then you need to make those into public functions.
Oh, okay. So like if you have a button there and you may set up initial state public, you can just hit that and it's gonna like reset and make everything. Okay,
Exactly.
gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, for example, in this player controller, all of these are forcefully made as public variables, public functions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good question. So normally, if you don't want to have it messed around by other classes, other outside sources, then it's safer to make it private. You make it public only if you really need them to be accessed by other classes. All right.